One. So with movies that have haunted elements, so there usually are like onset stories of like strange things happening. Is there anything like fun or like scary like on-set moments that you guys experienced, or was the set clean?
It was not the cleanest set in the world. There were a few things. I mean, like everyone probably has their own personal terrifying experience. Like some of it. I think I was just speaking about this with one of your colleagues earlier. I think that a part of this was a heightened awareness on all of our parts to the unknown or the occult or the unexplained elements that perhaps we are surrounded by on a daily basis and just aren't aware of it because we're not making a Poltergeist movie every day of our life. But when you're making these films, I think that there is an awareness. You flip a switch, and sure, we had unexplained incidences. We had lights that were blowing up on their own. We had drones that couldn't lock onto a GPS signal. I may or may not have taken some.
We're in Canada.
Right. I potentially brought home some thermal imaging gear and may or may not have seen footsteps walking along the hardwood floor of my 1830s Victorian house. But so there was some stuff, but I think I'll speak for all of us when I say that part of the joy of telling a supernatural story is that it opens you up to the possibilities of there being weird stuff out there.
Did anyone like pull pranks on another to scare each other on set?
What's that?
Did anyone pull pranks on another?
No.
Yeah, Sam, you wore red underwear.
Yes, I did.
I did traumatize
Getting it on.
Rosemary with red
Choice,
underwear. Yeah.
supernatural.
That was my prank. Yeah.
Over to you, right? You mentioned reigniting the franchise, though, in terms of Poltergeist. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a resurgence of the horror genre. It's doing it remarkably well financially. People are, flocking to see the newest one. This movie comes out during the summer, which is a very competitive, high-budget season. For all three, what do you think that the new fascination is with this genre?
It's been around for a while. I think it's like a roller coaster ride. People just like to be scared. I went to Six Flags Great Adventure recently. I did the roller coasters, and it was amazingly scary and thrilling. And there's something about a life and death experience, like parachuting out of a plane or something like that, where you get that adrenaline, and then when you come down from it, there's a feeling of enlightenment that comes along with that. I think you feel like you're safe again.
I also don't think there's as many communal experiences in entertainment as we've had, previously. Seeing a horror movie is like you grab your neighbor, you toss your popcorn over your shoulder, you start laughing with the person you don't even know because you can't believe you screamed in their ear. We're watching movies alone in front of our computer screens in our beds a lot, and there's something about coming together in this way that I think people still really vibe with.
That's true. I just saw Fury Road at the Dome, the ArcLight. It was fantastic.
Yeah, like a good horror movie is like a rock concert.
Yeah,
You know what I
it's
mean?
like a punk
the
rock
audience
concert.
participation is really big.
Yeah.
I'm here. The decision to make it 3D. How came up all this to make it like in 3D?
Basically, I begged and pleaded long enough until they allowed me to make it 3D. I felt convinced from the beginning that we don't get enough haunted house films made to a level of spectacle that I want or I wanted as a kid growing up. And I got to make a 3D film once before with my first film, Monster House, and it felt to me like the genre, the premise was so well suited to the experience of feeling transported out of your seat and into the screen. And so I knew in my heart that it's how I wanted to make the film, and secretly when we were photographing the film, I was aligning the compositions to make the most out of depth. And then we were able to sort of flip the switch pretty early in the production process, and from that point on, never looked back. But it was hardwired into how I wanted to make it.
I like it.
Cool.
In the
thanks.
portal, when they see all the dead body, and that was really
the
cool.
side. I mean, that was it. Like one of the things that got me so excited about making a new Poltergeist film was being able to take the camera into the other side, and that felt like, and that we all have cameras, or a lot of us have access now to cameras that can hover in space and float through rooms, these drones that are proliferating. And it's such an amazing time to be able to tap into like existing technology that teenagers or adults that act like teenagers have access to, and to use those elements to tell our ghost story was like a natural.
Hi, Sam. I was wondering, what are the favorite movies, the horror favorite movies that you have? And did you watch the Poltergeist before you shoot this one again?
I did watch the Poltergeist yet again in deciding whether to do the movie or not, and I did. And some of my favorite horror movies are great films. Not just great horror films. The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. John Carpenter's The Thing was a remake. So was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and those were great films with great acting, really amazing acting. Rosemary's Baby was Roman Polanski, so yeah, it's a great genre to be a part of.
Hey, Gil, this one's for you. It's a question about the setting of the film in terms of changing it from kind of an idyllic suburban setting, sort of a Reagan era, perfect manicured lawns, to kind of a more economically depressed and ragged looking version of the suburbs. Can you speak a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was initially the hook that made me feel like this was maybe something worth tackling. Because there's so many reasons not to make Poltergeist in 2015. And for me, that was one of those kind of core elements that felt like it was a way to examine how 30 years have changed the American dream, or the dream of the modern family. I grew up in those suburbs in a house that looked almost exactly like the house in the original Poltergeist film, just a little smaller and a little crappier. And so the opportunity to explore that playground, but to realize that 30 years have taken a toll on it, and in kind, and one of the great things that David Lindsay-Abaire, the screenwriter, tackled in his screenplay was to see how that would affect the characters who have maybe tried to hit a version of their life in the city, or in a place that better suited the dreams and aspirations, hopes that they had as a family, and maybe just missed that mark. And so as we meet them at the beginning of the story, it's an exciting place to see characters who are making the best of a downgraded situation, and that was something that was dramatically compelling. It felt like an interesting place to start a story. You guys want to add anything?
That says it all.
Stan and Rosemary, are you believers in the supernatural and ghosts? And do you watch any of those shows, so the ghost hunting?
I'm not a supernatural person. I'm a man of science. But it's fun. I like horror movies. I like ghost movies.
Yeah, I mean, I hold the possibility that there's so much we don't know about the world, and it's very arrogant to think that we know everything and that we know what's what. I think Sam Rockwell's very arrogant to be a man of science. No, so I don't know. I mean, for me, this movie, while it is about the supernatural, it was hard for me to wrap my head around acting with ghosts. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot easier and it was sort of more fertile ground for me to latch onto the idea of this is a child abduction story and a parent's worst nightmare of losing your child and may never see him again. So then it wasn't really a hard thing to act, and it was very grounded, and it's a very human story, and then we have special effects, and we're upside down in the car, and all that kind of stuff. But it was pretty satisfying on that front.
Hi, over here. Sam and Rosemary, could you talk about your experience of watching the original Poltergeist the first time, what you remember about that, and also, you know, it's a classic, iconic film. Why remake it?
Well, you know, when I saw it originally, it really just blew the top of my head off. I mean, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Back to the Future or, you know, any of these kinds of great classic films. You know, it was really beautifully made. Jerry Goldsmith was the composer, right? I think it was an incredible film and very moving. And so yeah, that's a good question. Why remake it? But you know, I mean, let's not forget Titanic was a remake. Beauty on the Bounty, you know, Cape Fear. Why do Hamlet over and over again? You know, or any of these things? You know, because they're great parts. It's a great story to tell, and you can't resist that if it's a great role. So it's a very actor-friendly genre. You know, there's a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it when I was 10 and being sufficiently scared. I also remember seeing Carrie and being traumatized, but Poltergeist I think is more suitable for teenagers. I didn't rewatch it when I got cast. I started to, and I made it up to the mosquito scene where they were slapping them on their face, which is hysterical and amazing, and Joe Beth Williams and Craig T. Nelson. I mean, we just have so much huge respect for them. Sam actually called them both and asked for advice and their blessing, which they were so cool and gave. But I didn't want it to get into my unconscious and be sort of trying to channel Joe Beth, so I didn't watch it. Maybe now I will go check it out. But yeah, it was kind of daunting to just know how much you loved the first one.
Hi, Sam. I would like to ask you about, you have two more projects coming out this year. What makes you choose one movie or another movie? Or what's the difference between the three projects that you're coming up with?
You know, it's a very personal decision. I think when you're picking material, it's a gut reaction, and it's a really personal thing, and you just either you go for something or you don't. You know, you might have an unconscious agenda creatively, but it's to work with Rosemary, because she was in two of the films that I did this year. But yeah, so that's really random and personal. It doesn't really make me, I can't make any sense of that.
Hi. In the movie, they kind of explain what the difference between ghosts and poltergeists are. Can you explain a little bit? And also, what is the scariest poltergeist you've encountered?
Okay. Well, the terms ghost and poltergeist, you know, it's interesting, the terminology. Obviously, these come from early spiritualism, early psychic research. The term poltergeist itself is a term from the mid-1800s, a German term meaning noisy ghost. A ghost itself is actually much older than that, the terminology. And these terms have actually changed, have been redefined over the course of modern spiritualism, early psychic research, and then modern parapsychology. And I think what a lot of researchers are trying to do in investigating these phenomena, they're trying to put them into categories so that you can try to explain what these phenomena are. In the thousands of cases I've been on, I've found that those categories they put them in actually don't qualify, because there's phenomena that are haunt-related and poltergeist-related that kind of intertwine with each other, at least regarding the symptoms, as it were, that produced. Typically, though, in parapsychology, a haunt has to do with a location, a place. Could be a cave, could be a boat, could be an airplane. Sometimes it's an object that they say is haunted. And typically what happens is there's some kind of residual energy, and typically a haunt is considered as a residual haunt. Some kind of residual energy that's left behind, and it plays like a videotape. And in the same manner that a videotape, you hear voices, you see people, but you can't communicate with them, so there's no consciousness there. And a haunt phenomenon, that's what the category they put that into. Poltergeist activity is different in that there's definite interaction happening. There's phenomena happening in the environment, changes in temperature, environmental anomalistic characteristics. People are being affected by these events. Sometimes it's more about people and an individual, specific individual, because the phenomena can follow them behind. And that's typically been categorized as haunt, poltergeist in that way. Haunt being more the ghost, residual element, poltergeist being different. And again, on the thousands of cases I've been on, they're not separate. These things cross over. Every single case is different and unique depending on the people involved, the circumstances, the dynamic of the environment. That's sort of the bulk of it.
And what's the scariest you've seen?
Scariest. Well,
or difficult to get rid of?
Yeah, I think. Oh, okay, that's a way different question. You know, I have to say, I mean, I have a very different approach in dealing with these phenomena because my background, just real quick, I mean, my background is from a foundation of magic and illusion. So I'm familiar with how people can misperceive events, okay? Then into parapsychology, which is a very different method of exploring these phenomena. And then a lot of time trained as an anomalist. And in anomalistics, you investigate something not just scientifically, but you're actually investigating on a method that's above empirical science because you're looking for things that are quantifiable. So all that being said, when I'm approaching these phenomena, I've kind of been trained and put into a mindset where fear isn't a factor. I've rarely ever been afraid walking in, whether it be a demonic possession, some kind of volatile poltergeist activity, or whatever the situation is. But I have been startled, no question, whether it be something ripping off the wall, flying at me, or especially in situations where it's not paranormal whatsoever, it's actually individuals that are psychotic in the situation and they want to inflict harm to anyone that enters. That's very disturbing. So, you know, I haven't been, those things haven't been really frightening. It's more or less been kind of a disturbing element. And same thing with possession exorcisms. It's the trauma that the people are going through and the family members. Cases, there was one case, poltergeist possession case, where the phenomena happening in the environment actually began manifesting in one of the people. And by the time I got there, they were holding out an individual and he had ripped his cheek off and had gouged out one of his eyes and was ripping at his body because he claimed that this thing had entered him. At least that was his claim of this phenomenon that was taking place. So the trauma that people are experiencing is by far the most difficult thing to deal with. And getting rid of the situations, I mean, there's no guarantee. I think anyone who says they can guarantee get rid of this phenomena is trying to sell you something because we don't, most of these cases, we don't even know the dynamics of what these phenomena are, which is why when you say poltergeist, there's so many definitions of poltergeist phenomena that try to explain them. And there have been cases where the phenomena just kept happening, even though we were using even scientific methods to try to stop it. And in those cases, usually people wipe out the building, structure, warehouse, whatever it is, and turn it into a landfill or concrete over certain areas, that kind of thing.